Brexit negotiations preparatory work, and intentions. According to the European Parliament, for the moment, it appears that the two sides have different views on the sequencing and scope of the negotiations, and notably the crossover between the withdrawal agreement and the structure of future relations, and this divergence itself may be one of the first major challenges to overcome. UK negotiation. Theresa May, Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Oliver Robbins, Europe Advisor to the Prime Minister. David Davis, until July 9, 2018, Secretary of State for exiting the European Union. Dominic Raab, from July 9, 2018 until November 15, 2018, Secretary of State for exiting the European Union. Sir Tim Barrow, UK Permanent Representative to the EU. The Department for exiting the European Union is responsible for overseeing the negotiations to leave the EU and for establishing the future relationship between the UK and EU. The United Kingdom's proposed principles were set out in the Article 50 notification. Constructive discussions. Citizens first. Comprehensive agreement. Minimize disruption. Ireland/Northern Ireland position. Technical talks on detailed policy. Work together on European values. The Prime Minister's formal letter of notification was delivered in Brussels on March 29, 2017. It included withdrawal from the European Atomic Energy Community. The letter recognized that consequences for the UK of leaving the EU included loss of influence over the rules that affect the European economy, and UK companies trading within the EU aligning with rules agreed by institutions of which the UK would no longer be part. It proposed agreeing to 7 principles for the conduct of the withdrawal negotiation. These are for engaging with one another constructively and respectfully, in a spirit of sincere cooperation. Aiming to strike an early agreement about the rights of the many EU citizens living in the United Kingdom, and UK citizens living elsewhere in the European Union. Working towards securing a comprehensive agreement, taking in both economic and security cooperation, and agreeing the terms of our future partnership alongside those of our withdrawal from the EU. Working together to minimize disruption and giving as much certainty as possible, letting people and businesses in the UK and the EU benefit from implementation periods to adjust in an orderly way to new arrangements. In particular, paying attention to the UK's unique relationship with the Republic of Ireland and the importance of the peace process in Northern Ireland. Beginning technical talks on detailed policy areas as soon as possible, including a free trade agreement covering sectors crucial to our linked economies such as financial services and network industries. Continuing to work together to advance and protect our shared liberal, democratic values of Europe, to ensure that Europe remains able to lead in the world, projecting its values and defending itself from security threats. Role of the countries of the United Kingdom. The constitutional lawyer and retired German Supreme Court Judge Udo Di Fabio has stated his opinion that separate negotiations with the EU institutions by Scotland or Northern Ireland would constitute a violation of the Lisbon Treaty, according to which the integrity of a member country is explicitly put under protection. UK general election. The start of negotiations was delayed until after the United Kingdom general election, which took place on June 8, 2017. Antonio Tajani, speaking on 20th of April, said that the early election should bring stability to the UK, which would have been good for negotiations. In the event, the election led to a hung parliament which has reduced the Prime Minister's room for manoeuvre, in particular in respect of the Irish border question due to her dependency on a confidence and supply agreement with Northern Ireland's Democratic Unionist Party. EU 27 negotiation. Michel Barnier, Chief Negotiator. Guy Verhofstadt, Representative of the European Parliament in the negotiations. Donald Tusk, President of the European Council. Antonio Tajani, President of the European Parliament. Jean-Claude Juncker, President of the European Commission, following the United Kingdom's notification under Article 50, draft guidelines for the negotiations were sent to EU delegations of the 27 other member states, the EU 27. The draft, prepared by the President of the European Council, states that the guidelines define the framework for negotiations under Article 50 and set out the overall positions and principles that the Union will pursue throughout the negotiation. It states that in the negotiations the Union's overall objective will be to preserve its interests, those of its member states, its citizens and its businesses, and that, in the best interest of both sides, the Union will be constructive throughout and strive to find an agreement. The draft sets out two core principles. The European Council will continue to base itself on the principles set out in the Statement of Heads of State or Government and of the Presidents of the European Council and the European Commission on June 29, 2016. It reiterates its wish to have the United Kingdom as a close partner in the future. It further reiterates that any agreement with the United Kingdom will have to be based on a balance of rights and obligations, and ensure a level playing field. Preserving the integrity of the European single market excludes participation based on a sector-by-sector approach. A non-member of the Union, that does not live up to the same obligations as a member, cannot have the same rights and enjoy the same benefits as a member. In this context, the European Council welcomes the recognition by the British government that the four freedoms of the single market are indivisible and that there can be no cherry-picking. Negotiations under Article 50 TEO, Treaty on European Union, will be conducted as a single package. In accordance with the principle that nothing is agreed until everything is agreed, individual items cannot be settled separately. The Union will approach the negotiations with unified positions, and will engage with the United Kingdom exclusively through the channels set out in these guidelines and in the negotiating directives. So as not to undercut the position of the Union, there will be no separate negotiations between individual member states and the United Kingdom on matters pertaining to the withdrawal of the United Kingdom from the Union. According to the European Parliament, the withdrawal agreement and any possible transitional arrangements should enter into force well before the elections to the European Parliament of May 2019, and the negotiations should focus on the legal status of European Union citizens living or having lived in the United Kingdom and of United Kingdom citizens living or having lived in other member states, as well as other provisions concerning their rights. The settlement of financial obligations between the United Kingdom and the European Union. The European Union's external border. The clarification of the status of the United Kingdom's international commitments taken as a member of the European Union, given that the European Union of 27 member states will be the legal successor of the European Union of 28 member states. Legal certainty for legal entities, including companies. The designation of the Court of Justice of the European Union as the competent authority for the interpretation and enforcement of the withdrawal agreement. On April 18, 2017, a spokesman for Donald Tusk said we expect to have the Brexit guidelines adopted by the European Council on 29 April and, following that, the Brexit negotiating directives ready on 22 May. On 29 April the EU 27 unanimously endorsed the draft guidelines with no debate. In a speech to a plenary session of the European Committee of the Regions in Brussels on March 22, 2017, Barnier, as EU chief negotiator for the preparation and conduct of the negotiations, said that the EU wanted to succeed by reaching a deal with the British, not against them. On 22 May the European Commission Council, following the approval of negotiating directives which had been adopted by strong qualified majority, 72% of the 27 member states, i.e. 20 member states representing 65% of the population of the EU 27, authorized the opening of Article 50 discussions with the Commission appointed as the negotiator. It further confirmed that all agendas, EU position papers, non-papers and EU text proposals will be released to the public and published online. Intergovernmental organization. Intergovernmental organizations also involved in Brexit uncertainty considerations include the World Trade Organization, WTO, and the International Air Transport Association, IATA. IATA expects an agreement to avoid disruption. Phases. EU 27 guidelines include agreement on the so-called divorce bill, Agreement on rights of EU citizens living in the UK. Agreement on the border between Northern Ireland and the Republic within the withdrawal phase. The second phase, covering the post-Brexit relationship between the EU27 and the UK, will begin as soon as the European Council decides that sufficient progress has been made in the first phase towards reaching a satisfactory agreement on the arrangements for an orderly withdrawal. The earliest opportunity for this decision was October 19, 2017, at a summit of EU leaders. Although at that meeting it was agreed to start negotiations during the December meeting.